Hang on a second. Nick? Nick! Stacey, this is really weird.
What?
The TV just turned on.
What?
Yeah. Nick! Well, I don't know where Nick is. At least the TV's quiet, so I'll just keep talking. Um, oh, there he is. The TV just mysteriously turned on. Oh, the dog turned on the TV.
He was bored. He wanted to watch
I
something.
guess. Mystery solved.
You're listening to Chicagoland's finest podcast, featuring the Gorehound,
Well, because I'm bringing us in.
Jen,
I mean, it's horrifying because,
Cousin Charles, and Nick.
I know. I thought I was going to screw it up again.
It's time for the all-new Culture Cast, starting now.
I'm Kiwi.
I'm Stacey.
And this is the all-new Culture Cast. And you'll notice that none of the regular hosts are on tonight's episode. We are having a very special all-female episode and none of the regular cast members. So I'm Kiwi. You may know me. I've been on a few podcasts from, this podcast. And my co-host tonight is my sister-in-law, Stacey.
And I've never been on a podcast.
I'm not even sure you've listened to a podcast.
No, quite possibly not.
So this is a whole new experience for you.
It is.
So we're going to have fun tonight. We are talking about two books by J.T. Hunter, The Vampire Rapist and The Devil in the Darkness. But before we divulge into our books, we are going to do our regular segments. Now, normally Gorehound likes to do Man Crush of the Week, but I think with this female-empowered episode, we should do Woman Crush of the Week.
Woman crush.
Now, I personally have one. If you would like to share one, Stacey, as well, you can. My woman crush this week is Emmy Rossum. Now, you may know her from Shameless. I think she was in Femme on the Opera. And I started watching Shameless again this week, and I'm like, you know what? She has a very strong female lead character. I like her. She doesn't put up with crap. And she is my woman crush of the week.
Okay. I can do a woman crush as well. I'm going to do an old throwback, though,
Ooh.
of Kate Beckinsale.
Love her.
Yes. How can you not love her? She's beautiful, she's strong, and she's just an all-around badass. Can I say that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
You could swear in the podcast.
Okay. So, yeah, she definitely is my woman crush of the week.
You know what? She would be like my get out of free marriage card for a female. Mm-hmm. Yeah, sorry about that, Nick. Okay. And we'll be doing What Have You Been Watching?
What have you been watching?
I have been watching Shameless, as I just said. Nick and I really haven't been watching too much TV, but I will say this. I did watch a documentary on Eileen Wuornos the other day. Now, it was like the second one that came out. It wasn't the first one, and it was about her like being executed, and she seemed a little crazy.
Yeah, she was a nut, that's for sure.
I mean, that can be like a whole nother episode, but it was like, ooh, like she is definitely crazy. Like obviously you're crazy to kill people, but she was a few screws short there.
Yeah, but it also goes back to the old, nurture versus nature kind of thing where she was treated very badly and abused and things like that. It's that old debate whether she was born crazy or the events that happened in her life made her that way towards the end. Of course, they would contribute to that, but, it's an old debate whether people are born psychopaths or if they're made into them. So she would be an interesting person to research and kind of dive into a little bit more of that and see how she acted as a child as well.
Ooh, I'm so glad you said that because I feel like this is about the serial killers that we're going to be talking to tonight.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you been watching anything interesting lately?
I don't really watch a whole lot of TV these days, but I do watch a lot of Forensic Files. When I do get a chance to watch it, it's just an old favorite show, just creepy and amazing what people are capable of doing, and it's always very intriguing. So that's pretty much all that I've been watching recently.
For those who probably don't know Stacey, which I'm guessing is probably all of you except for my mom because she does listen to the podcast, Stacey is a mother of two and she is very busy, and I'm not sure how she had time to read these books, but she did, and she is making time to do this podcast tonight. So, thank you, Stacey, and congrats on being a great mom.
Oh, thank you. I do what I can.
All right, let's get into tonight's episode. Like I said earlier, we are talking about two books by J.T. Hunter, and the first one that we read was Devil in the Darkness. Now, Stacey, do you just want to give us a small recap, and then we can go into the details a little bit later?
Yeah, this book was about a man named Israel Keyes. He lived in Alaska, but he traveled all over the country. And what you find out why he traveled around the country in the book. He was a carpenter. He was known by his friends and family as a really great guy. He was always there to talk. He helped out. He was kind of the I'd give my shirt off my back kind of guy to all that knew him. But he had an extremely darker side to him, and killed an unknown number of people. He played a lot of mind games in this book with the police after he was actually arrested. It's hard to say what all he actually did in his travels, but it is primarily about an abduction of a girl named Samantha and how he murdered her, and that's how he ended up getting caught.
Mm-hmm. The second book we read was The Vampire Rapist, which The Devil in the Darkness, I believe, was more in today's world. Wasn't like around 2010, 2012, somewhere around there, right? When he got caught anyway.
Yeah, it was real recent. Yeah.
And then The Vampire Rapist took place more in the 80s. This was a very sick person. He had a very high IQ. I think they said like around 160. And he had the craziest sexual fantasies. He, like Israel Keyes, killed an unknown amount of women. He liked to rape women, suck their blood, and then he would kill them. And he got caught because he got a little bit sloppy because he left one of his victims home alone. And he, very disturbing.
Oh, yeah. He was probably one of the most disturbing people I've ever read about in my life.
You know, what I find odd is that you were not aware of these two serial killers before we read these books, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Now, as evil, as crazy as these two were, I'm surprised that they didn't get more media attention.
Yeah, I agree with that. What was his name? Crutchley, right? Crutchley John Crutchley. He was the vampire rapist. But you have to remember that he was around the same time as Ted Bundy and Jeffrey Dahmer and things like that, as you recall. Oh, and the Unabomber and things like that, which is, in the book they allude to and they jump around to those stories because it was all kind of happening within the same time. So I think those bigger names and those people that did those things kind of overshadowed him, which is actually kind of amazing because this guy was extremely twisted. He was smart. He made programs. He worked for the government. He did all these amazing things in his regular life, but he just was capable of some really wicked things. So it is a little disappointing, actually, that I've never heard of him personally before this, which is amazing in itself since I read a lot about serial killers and have for a long time.
Our viewers should also note, I should have said this earlier, Stacey, how many books on serial killers have you read?
Oh, man. I don't even know. Probably, I'd say at least 100.
I've read a fair share amount, but I knew your amount would very surpass mine. Now, I hope you already know this story, so I'm going to tell it because I think it's hilarious. But
Okay.
after you were married, my brother said that if he ever went missing, that you should be the first suspect because you would know how to hide a body.
Yeah, that's due to all the true crime shows slash books that I've read and watched and things over time. To be fair, he has known this about me since he met me.
This is
So,
true. This is true.
if he wanted to run away, he should have by now.
I've also known my sister-in-law since the third grade. So I do remember in high school that we did read a couple books together on at least killers. I don't know if they were serial killers, but there were some murder books that we read.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
this is not a new trait for you. So yeah, my brother did know what he was marrying.
And I haven't killed him yet. So there we have that.
There we go. Um, okay, so going back, you mentioned the whole nature versus nurture, which it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of implied that Israel Keyes from The Devil in the Darkness that he didn't really have a bad childhood.
No, he actually had a very pleasant and normal childhood from what they say in the book. Um, he started, I believe he said that he started causing pain to animals and things like that, but that didn't even start until
Yeah.
he was more of a teenager, which seemed kind of odd and different and put him apart from, the typical serial killer image that you get. You usually think of, a little 5-year-old kid killing kittens and things like that, but he wasn't like that.
Mm-mm. Whereas on the other hand, John Crutchley, he didn't, I wouldn't say he had any, well, I guess it could kind of be considered physical abuse. His mother wanted a daughter so bad to the point that when John was born, he was dressed as a girl for the first 5 years of his life.
Yep, and if you remember, the reason that his mother did that is because he had an older sister that died when she was 13,
Yes.
and the mother was so broken up about it and wanted to replace her. Almost, John, I believe, thought that, she wished that he would have died instead of his sister. So, yeah, being dressed as a girl for the first 5 years of his life, really put in place a lot of confusion, I think.
Oh, and then he did have a younger sister eventually, though.
Yes, he did. And that, I believe, isn't that when she stopped dressing him like a girl? Is when he
Oh,
had a
that could
younger
be.
sister, wasn't it?
I don't remember
I
that detail, but you could be correct.
I want to say that. I mean, I'm not 100% on that, but that's what I recall.
I don't want to say this is the reason that these two were serial killers, but I do. They implied that their parents were kind of almost a cult religion.
Yeah.
Both John Crutchley and Israel Keyes. They were at least atheists. I'm not, they might have. I can't remember if John was agnostic or atheist, but regardless, religion was not a part of either of these lives. But their parents very much, enforced it. And they still were very religious at the point when these two were getting caught.
Right, right. Yeah, they were really radical religious people, over the top. Yeah, both of them, whether that contributed to, how they turned out or not, you can go back and forth all day about it. But it is kind of interesting that both of them had that aspect and, with their parents.
Now, Israel Keyes, I don't want to say it was a serial killer with a conscience, but he ended up having a child of his own. And what was he, about in his 20s or so when he had his child?
I do believe so, yes.
Although I think he said he started killing, was he a teenager in his early 20s? I'm not sure if
I think
they
he was
ever...
late teenage.
Yeah, I was...
From what I would gather, he was in his late teens, but he typically killed couples. He killed, well, not all totally,
but couples with no kids. Since he said he had his child, that he could not kill a family that had children. So he killed The couple that they do mention in the book, I can't remember what their names were offhand, but they state how like he looked in the house, he broke into the house, didn't see any like toys laying around, and then so he was like, okay, these are going to be my victims, you know.
Yeah. It was Bill and Lorraine Courier.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So yeah, he staked them out a little bit, and he made sure they didn't have a dog either. That was his other thing.
Right.
But he ended up cutting their phone lines before he went in, and yeah, and he didn't kill them in their home. He took them elsewhere and killed them both later on. What was interesting about that, I believe it was it in Vermont?
Yes, it
I want to
was.
say it was in Vermont. What was interesting about that is later on down the line when he did get arrested and he confessed that he was the murderer of Bill and Lorraine, he told them where he put the bodies, but unfortunately that house that he put them in was abandoned and eventually torn down, and they never did find their bodies. I know they searched the landfills and everything as well, but to
Which
no
had
avail.
cost like taxpayers like thousands of dollars, and it was a
Oh, yeah.
long, excursion, and they didn't find any body parts. And it's just, he wanted to see pictures of them if they found them. He was very,
Right.
very sick.
He was, but he also, I believe it had said, he had a pretty high IQ himself. He was a very intelligent person. He planned out everything he did. He even buried, if you remember, kill kits all over the
Yes.
United States. He would take 5-gallon pails and dig holes in wooded or secluded areas, and he'd put guns and money and all sorts of things in these barrels and bury them. So then whenever he was in the area, he'd have a killing kit so he could find his next victim or victims whenever he went
We
to
don't
those
even,
areas again.
right, and we don't even know how many kill kits are still out there.
No, no, yeah, because he never really did confess to everything before the end there.
With John Crutchley, he did so poor in school because he had such a high IQ, he was extremely bored. Now, he was very interested in computers, especially like back in the 80s, that was like the thing, and
Yeah,
he,
he was one of the very few people that had a home computer at that time.
yeah, he was working for Harris something.
Yeah, Harris Corporation.
Yeah, and he
I
had
believe it
like
was.
high security, he was probably given too much access to things that he shouldn't have been allowed to have.
Oh, yeah, at one point in his time, he worked in the Pentagon, I believe it said, and that's what gave him a high security clearance. Didn't they say, I believe that?
I believe they did too. Um, you know, because both of these guys led, completely double lives. Now, I feel like I'm a good judge of character. And I would like to think that if I met these two, I would be like, there's something wrong about these two. But people swore up and down that these two, you would never have known that they were serial killers.
Yeah, especially Israel Keys, especially them. I think he was even better than John at hiding that, because John, I mean, I think he was violent with one of his wives and then not another one. He was married several times.
I think they
And,
mentioned at least twice, and that he did choke his first wife during sex,
mhm,
and she choked him back, and then he stopped choking her.
right. Yeah.
Which that's another thing those two have in common is that they both preferred to choke their victims
Yeah.
as their form of killing them. Only Israel used a gun once because he tied up a guy who got loose and he couldn't restrain him anymore, so he ended up shooting him.
Right.
That
And I
was the
believe that was Bill Courier.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. But I think John Crutchley only choked his victims.
Yep. Strangled him and bloodlet him.
This is true.
So, yeah, he bled them. He knew exactly how much blood he could take at a certain amount of time to just render them unconscious before actually killing them. He was a special man.
Ugh, it just gives me the heebie-jeebies.
Yeah, the book, the Vampire Rapist book, got very graphic at times, and it does turn your stomach a little bit at exactly what lengths he went to, especially with his final victim. Go ahead.
Oh, no, it was kind of like, Ted Bundy. People, Ted Bundy didn't look, he looked like the guy next door. People trusted him. And John Crutchley's last victim was a girl visiting a friend out of state, and she wanted to go get cigarettes. So she walked to the store, and it started raining, and there was John Crutchley. He pulled up in his car, and he's like, "Oh, I'll drive you the rest of the way," and she's like, "Well, all right." He looked normal. So she gets in the car with him, and he's like, "Oh," he goes, "Wait, I forgot my notebook at my house. We have to go back to my house. I'll just run in and get it, and we'll be on our way." And that's how he got her. And he pulls in the garage, and he gets behind the seat, and he slams her forward and knocks her unconscious. And the next thing you know, she's tied up inside his house. And John Crutchley's wife was away at that time visiting family out of state.
Right, and he also had a young son. And so so whenever they were out of state visiting family or whatever is when he decided to strike and find his next victim.
And Christina was there a couple of days, I think it was, and he had to go to work, and this was the only time he decided to leave a victim in the house. But he thought that he drained enough of her blood that she would not be able to have the energy to escape. And he left her in the bathtub. And she's also fortunate that the window is broken, because usually you'd have to push, I guess, on both ends to unlock it and push up, but the one latch was broken, and she only had enough energy to push up on the one. And so she got the window open, she climbed out, it was a first floor window, and she ran to the street with a towel. Now, one truck passed her by. Apparently they saw her and must have thought she was crazy and kept driving, but luckily a man did stop and said, "Are you actually hurt?" And she said yes, drove her back to his place. His wife was there, and they called the cops. And I'm surprised John Crutchley didn't run at that point, but, she was the only person who got away. And we don't know how many people John killed, and we don't know how many he would have kept on killing.
Oh, yeah. And Christina was was the first one, too, that he left living so long, too. And she was only 19 when he abducted her. So he didn't take into account that because she's so young, that, her body can bounce back a little bit better than somebody that was older than that. But he had kept her alive longer because he wanted to keep his fantasy going. He was disappointed that the other ones died so quickly when he would strangle them and bleed them. So he decided to keep her alive longer. And, that's had he killed her, or had she not escaped, you're right, who knows how many more people he would have gotten away with, because nobody suspected him of anything. He had nothing on his property, anywhere that they could find at the time that would have even made him a suspect in anything.
I would like to think that if this happened, in today's world, that the cops would have taken it a little bit more seriously. Back in the 80s, I don't think they really thought monsters like this existed. And
right.
When they did have a search warrant to go into his house, they looked over a lot of things. Like, they could have found enough charges for murder on this guy had they actually looked a little bit harder. They didn't even confiscate his computer, which,
No.
I'm pretty sure that's one of the first things they confiscate now when they go into search warrants. John also kept a trophy or something to remember all his victims by. So
Oftentimes driver's licenses.
licenses. He did have the head of one of his victims on his property. He had to have something from each of his people. And he also had a notebook. He joked later on, and I don't know if this is true, that if he hadn't wrote down how many people he killed, he wouldn't actually know how many he
Yeah.
So, in today's world, oh man, I think this guy would have been convicted for murder, right away. But unfortunately,
One would hope.
The 80s were a little bit different time period.
Yeah. But, also who knows when you live in rural areas like that and you put on such a good facade to everybody that's around you, who would think anything like that would happen? It goes back to the thing too. It's like you never know what's going on in your neighbor's house, when nobody else is there. And it just kind of gives you an uneasy feeling for sure.
With Israel Keys, his last victim was also a teenage girl. I think because she was still in high school. I want to say, what is like 17?
Yeah, I believe she's a senior in high school, is what I recall.
Now, Israel liked to plan in advance who he was going to kidnap and murder. But when he met Samantha, she was working at a little coffee shack that I think they said there was an inside area. It couldn't have been very big at all, maybe one table to sit down. It's one of those where they have like on the side of the road where you just drive up and order coffee. Now, he had walked up there and ordered his coffee, and he saw her, and he was so taken by her that he decided that he was going to take her back. Now, he also doesn't hunt in his own backyard. As you recall, we said he was from Alaska. Most of, I think, everyone that he killed was, down in, the United States, below Canada. I realize Alaska's...
A lot in Texas.
Yeah, I'm not trying to say Alaska's not part of the United States. I'm just saying, south of Alaska.
Yeah,
and so he ended up kidnapping her, taking her back to his house, but he had a shed big enough that he kept her in there. Now, Israel Keys had a live-in girlfriend at the time, and he had a daughter, but the daughter went back and forth between his house and her mom's house. So Samantha thinks she's being held under ransom, and he goes and has her tell her where her debit card is, because he realizes after he kidnapped her that she didn't have her wallet, but her wallet was actually in her boyfriend's truck. So he goes over and gets the wallet, comes back, and she's like, okay, like she thinks she's just being held ransom. This guy's so sick. He rapes her, and then he kills her by strangulation using a rope, and then he raped her again, and then he wrapped her up, put her in the shed. It was so cold she froze. When he got back a couple days later, he had to defrost her, and then he raped her again. This is one sick guy.
Yes, and then to give people hope that she was still alive, he actually put makeup on her dead body and posed her in a way that would make her look somewhat alive, just kind of roughed up, and took a picture of her and put it in a letter or with a letter, and he put that in a certain place, and kind of led investigators to that place later on. But yeah, he went through great lengths with Samantha, and the way that he stashed her and then put makeup back on her and raped her again after she was dead. And
so I'm curious why he didn't take a picture of her while she was still alive. Like, could he not control himself? Yeah, I mean, even the father said, like, when he saw the photo, he was like, something looked off about her, but, she looked well enough that she was alive, but at the time of that photo, she was long dead.
Right. And, I think he probably didn't take a picture before he killed her because he didn't plan this one out like he normally does. And he didn't have a plan, and so he really was just kind of rolling with whatever came to his mind at the time. And he killed her so quickly after kidnapping her that I think everything else that followed was an afterthought.
Oh, probably. He ended up getting caught because to me this just sounds completely dumb. I mean, if you're going to go with the ransom, I mean, I wouldn't actually try to collect the money. He had them put money into her bank account, and he said that he was going to withdraw the money. So I think he was visiting, was it for his sister's wedding?
Yeah, I believe so.
He went down to Texas, and he rented a car, and he went to a few different banks and withdrew money. So they saw her debit card was getting action. So they start following the trail, and he thinks he's going to outsmart the cops. He goes to return his rental car, but then they give him the exact same make, model, and color. Do you remember that?
Yep, yeah, when they exchanged his car, yeah, they
Uh-huh.
did. They gave him the exact replica of the car.
I don't know why he didn't say, hey, can I at least have a different color of a Ford Focus? No, they gave him the exact same white Ford Focus.
Yeah, well, and the interesting thing about that is he never really did anything like that before. He never held ransoms and things. He robbed victims, while kidnapping them and everything like that. But I think that maybe subconsciously he wanted to get caught because how it's so traceable when you're using ATM cards. They're watching her activity on her account because she's missing.
Right. I
And
mean,
they're going to jump on it wherever that is. And when he's using an ATM, whether it be, it was all in the same area. It was different ATMs, but it was still the same area. So they put cops everywhere.
yep, and they ended up finding the white Ford Focus, and they pulled him over, and I don't recall how they arrested him, but they did get him in jail, and then he did confess to killing her. Do you remember
Right.
how they arrested him? Did he just confess when he got pulled over?
No, I believe he had, he had her debit card. And then I believe he had other suspicious items in his car with him, I believe is what happened. And so they had arrested him, but they sent him back to Alaska because they didn't know how deep this ran. And Samantha's case was up in Alaska where he was from. So I know they did transport him back up there, but I believe he had suspicious things in his car along with her debit card.
So did Ted Bundy.
Yeah.
That's how he got arrested. Now, at that point, they still thought, I think, Samantha was alive, correct, when he
They
went back
did.
to Alaska?
Yep, they did. He let them think that for, I don't think a really long time, but I do believe he let them believe she was alive for a little while.
There's probably no hope of finding most of the bodies of either of these two. Israel ended up chopping up Samantha into pieces and tied wire around them and then weights and then threw them in the lake. He went ice
Mhm.
fishing and drew a hole in the darkness and, just the other guy was ice fishing and, he dropped her body parts in the water and he did tell them where she was and they did go and retrieve them. So they did
Right.
retrieve
They did
Samantha.
retrieve her. Yeah, and when he was, confessing to some of his crimes, they did, I believe, find another person in another lake elsewhere, near one of his kill kits. It's hard to say, how many people he did kill because that, I think, was his preferred method of disposal was in bodies of water. And he actually did fish at the time of disposing of them as well
Yeah, he
to
did.
to
Except
let on.
with Bill and Lorraine, though, he left them in garbage bags and
Right, in
in the
that house.
basement. Yeah, and so when the people saw it when it got demolished, they just thought, "Oh, it's just garbage," and they didn't actually open the garbage bags.
Right.
Ugh.
Yeah, so they were lost forever. Whereas then you have John Crutchley, where he had what seems to be a lot of disposal methods. It's believed that he burned bodies, he decapitated them, he buried them, he buried their body parts in different places. I mean, he disposed of bodies as far as anybody can tell because, again, we don't know how many people he's actually murdered. They believe they can tie, what is it, at least 8 women to him, something like that.
John Crutchley?
Yeah,
It's got to be more than that because he was willing to confess 11 or 12.
right. I think by name, though, maybe it is maybe closer to 12. I don't know, but they think that he killed upwards of 30, 40, maybe even 50 women.
I think they thought the same thing about Israel Keys, that
Mm-hmm.
he killed at least that many. And the thing with John Crutchley, he chose victims that purposely would not be missed.
Right.
He only killed one person that he briefly dated, and the cops all knew that he killed her, but they couldn't find any evidence that actually linked him to her murder. So he got away at that point.
Which I think gave him the confidence to keep doing what he was doing. And I think that's why when Christina escaped his house, he didn't actually flee because he thought he could outsmart them. If you recall, it was, he said, oh, she was willing, she wanted to do this, it just got a little out of hand, things like that. And he was, I think some people bought it, the ones that thought that he was such a great guy, kind of was like, oh, yeah, they could see that would happen. And Christina almost didn't press charges because she just wanted to move on and go back to California and be done with it because John Crutchley was in Florida, I believe. Yes, he was in Florida for a lot of his life, and that's where he had abducted and raped Christina. But she, eventually did want to press charges so he could not do that to somebody else. And he was just so egotistical that he was so much smarter than everybody else that he'd be able to outsmart the police. And, for a lot of the cases he did, the only one they really stuck him with was Christina. That was it. They knew he did a lot of things, but they couldn't legally prove it.
What's interesting with John Crutchley is that there was one police officer that he did have a connection to, and Crutchley's lawyer told the police officer that he's willing to confess to these 11 or 12 murders. And the next day, they're at the police office, and another police officer above this guy caught wind of it, and he's like, no, how dare you go around my back? We are not offering this guy a plea deal. He really thought that they were going to nail him on all these murders. And, Crutchley would not talk to this other police officer, and they could have sentence, at least he was willing to, I think, do life in prison, and he was going to give up, 11, 12 victims. And this police officer had too much pride and said, no, we're not doing that.
Yep, and so their bodies were never found. They don't even know who they were.
When Israel Keys was caught, and again, you have to wonder, these two, were they getting sloppy intentionally? Because when Israel was caught, it was almost maybe a relief. He wanted to tell his story. When you read The Devil in the Darkness, he goes into a lot of graphic detail about the murder and kidnapping of Samantha. And I think he, took pleasure in retelling his story. Now, he did have one stipulation, that he wanted to be convicted and executed within a year. He did not want this dragging on. He had a daughter, and he did not want her hearing about him, about this case, and he was trying to work with authorities. And the people who were getting his story didn't have the actual permission to kill him. And his stipulation, too, was that all this information had to be kept out of the media. And he did end up saying that Bill and Lorraine Courier, that he did kill them, and the media did catch wind that those were connected. Now, family of Bill and Lorraine and the family of Samantha, they were told that not to talk about Israel Keys because they were trying to get more information. And they did. They kept up their end of the bargain because they were hoping that, other families could have closure too. And Israel did not think things were moving fast enough. He was getting frustrated. And after a few months, he committed suicide in prison.
Yes, and in a very methodical way, actually. Because they had him on suicide watch previous to that happening, and then they took him off of suicide watch, and then, he did kill himself. So he took all of that information and who all he killed, where their bodies were with him. So after that had happened, too, they were trying to take what little information they did have and reach out to people. If you have a family member missing from these places during these time frames, please come forward, and things like that. But I don't think they were really able to connect much more to Israel because they didn't come through in his mind on their side of the bargain. And he was just getting tired of, I think, being around. And the more he was around, he thought his name would be getting out more and his daughter would know what kind of person he was truly. And I think that eventually was just too much for him, where he decided to take himself out.
Which he committed suicide by getting a hold of a razor blade, and he had cups in his cell. And what he did was he slit his wrist, and he had his wrist going into the cups so that would catch the blood, so they wouldn't see the blood right away. And he also was able to create a noose, essentially, so that he choked himself and bled himself at the same time, to the point where the coroner didn't know actually if he died because of blood loss or because of suffocation.
Right, and he did that too. He did the noose as a backup because he knew that once he lost enough blood from cutting his wrist that he would pass out. And he didn't want there to be a chance that the guards would spot that and be able to save him. So what he did was create that noose so when he passed out, it would put pressure on his neck, and it was kind of, a sure way to kill himself. Without anybody noticing. The only reason anybody even went in the cell is because those cups overflowed with his blood, and there was blood on the floor. And that's when they went in and realized what he had done. So by the time there was blood on the floor, he was long gone. There was no chance for them to revive him at all.
Now, he had to have, I'm thinking there must have been a dirty security guard, because he should not have had a razor blade.
No, especially just coming off of the suicide watch.
I think they said that they are allowed to get a razor when they shave, but they have to turn the razor back in when they're done.
Right, and somebody's there watching them shave. So it's like, here's the razor, shave, and then you hand it back kind of deal is the way I understood it to be when they were on that kind of watch. So where he actually got the razor blade is really a mystery. But I mean, he was very manipulative and he was cunning, and it's hard to say who he talked into what. Maybe it was another prisoner at one time and he had it stashed away. Who knows? Yeah,
he did
all just up to speculation.
He did write a suicide note too, which made no sense when you read it. I mean, he didn't give up any more victims. It was almost like gibberish.
Mm-hmm.
Before he died, they did show him, pictures of, deceased people, missing people. And there was one picture that they showed and he goes, "I'm not ready to talk about her yet." So they did identify, one of his victims.
Right. But whatever happened to her and where her body is, I believe is still unsolved.
He also wanted one of the police people, like the police chief or someone, it was a female, who he wanted, because I think she said serial killers aren't born, they're made. And he wanted his story told because he wanted to prove to her that they're born, because he was born a serial killer.
Right.
He didn't have any traumatic, incidents like, Crutchley, first 5 years of his life, he was dressed as a female.
Right. And I think that his parents were pretty stern and possibly mildly abusive in other ways, other than just mentally. Kind of alluded to that. I don't think they really got into many specifics as far as that goes, but it kind of gave me the feeling anyway that he was not treated well by his parents as a child.
Mm-hmm. John Crutchley, his death is also... I guess we should talk about his jail time first. He was put in jail, and he was just arrested for the kidnap and rape of Christina. And actually, they had a robbery charge on there because they said that he robbed her blood.
Which made headlines, because that was the first time in history somebody had been charged with theft over somebody's blood. But, if you look at it that way, it does make sense, They
started, doing more research into John, and they figured out they had a serial killer, I think, on their hands pretty early on, correct?
I believe so, yes. Or they suspected as much.
They suspected this much. And John Crutchley, now, he got put in a cell with a few other people, and he was in there for
10 years.
10 years, but before he was convicted for the crime, he was put in a cell like with 4 other people, and he became close to a couple of them, and he apparently confessed a lot to these guys. Now, what he confessed them, apparently he said, I have bodies hidden here, and these people reported back to the police. Of course, they wanted to get plea deals to get shorter sentences. They're like, well, we'll tell you everything, John told us. Now, I'm thinking John gave wrong information to intentionally throw off the police because he knew that they would go and tell them.
Oh, yeah. It would just send them on a wild goose chase to keep them completely in the dark. He was so intelligent, and really, his ideas that he can fool police and everything were accurate. Like, he did. He fooled them until the end.
Oh,
so
we didn't mention the bond. He when he was arrested, they had a bond, and he paid it, and he was released. And so in that time, he went and he got rid of all the incriminating evidence that he had. And then they said,
out of his house.
Then they said, oh, you know what? He's probably more dangerous than what we thought. We're going to have to increase his bond. And then he had to go back in jail. So in that time period, he got rid of everything.
Yeah, I think he was out for a day on bond, and where he hid it, who knows? He said he had made a comment that they would never find it, and they never did. When he always claimed that he could outsmart the police, and they weren't as smart as him, he was actually accurate. He did outsmart them all the way until the end. He was always 3 steps ahead of them in anything that they tried to pin on him. Like I said, they knew that he committed a certain amount of crimes and had these certain different victims, but they couldn't legally connect him in a way that they'd be able to convict him. But while he was in prison, aside from admitting things to other inmates that he began to trust, and whether that information, was accurate or not, who knows, but he was a model citizen, like a model inmate. He didn't cause trouble. He kept to himself. He, did different jobs around helping the guards with computers and fixing computers for guards and things like that. So really, even the guards had a good feeling about him as far as his character. So he was a really good manipulator as well.
Which his sentencing is interesting because he pled guilty because his lawyer said, well, you'll probably only serve like a few years, 3 to 4, if you confess to the rape and kidnap of Christina. They were willing to drop the blood robbery charge. And so he's like, okay, I did it. And he ended up getting sentenced to 25 years in prison.
It was 25. Mm-hmm.
But then due to his good behavior as a model inmate, he served 10.
Right.
Now, this next part of the story is a little controversial as well. So he's going to go on parole, and they release him, and they go into this other building, and they're like, well, you're going to have to do a drug test. And he goes, oh, I smoked marijuana last night. And so he takes a drug test, and he fails. Now, there's controversy as, did John actually smoke marijuana, or did people blow enough smoke in his face that he failed the test?
Right. Well, and it is important to note as well, throughout his entire sentence, he was in a different building in prison altogether, where it was a non-smoking building. He didn't smoke anything, not cigarettes, marijuana, anything. He didn't do drugs. He was straight and narrow the entire time he was in prison. And for whatever reason, 2 or 3 weeks before his release, he got moved to a building. It was a smoking building where there's, drug addicts and all sorts of different kind of things going on. And so why he was even moved to that building is the first step in the people that believe he was set up. So what he says was happening, what at first is, a bunch of guys came to my cell and we had a going away party and I smoked a marijuana cigarette and really threw off a lot of the guards that had been around him previously because they're like, he's never even smoked a cigarette the entire time he's been here. Why would he do that right before he left? So as the story, progresses, what his cellmate had said was a bunch of the inmates had seen a story about him on the TV and enraged them, and they were actually going to beat him up or hurt him or kill him or whatever they were going to do to him. His cellmate had talked them out of physical harm, but they did pin him up against the wall and blow smoke into his face from marijuana cigarettes to try to get him in trouble.
I wonder if they just threatened him enough that they said, smoke the cigarette or else. Because, there's a lot of media surrounding, the vampire rapist, a guy who drank people's blood. This part is also controversial because when he was in this building and he failed the drug test, they said, well, you automatically get life in prison because you violated the terms of parole. Now, did he actually violate parole? Because he still technically wasn't on parole when he smoked the marijuana.
Right. So he didn't really, and that's what his lawyer argued when he went to court over his violation of probation charge, was he didn't violate probation. He wasn't out of prison when this happened. They shouldn't take an immediate drug test. He has to be out of jail in order to violate probation, which, I tend to agree with. I don't mind that they put him back in jail because he was a sick, twisted man, but under the terms that they put him back was unfair. But at the same token, it's kind of like what the judge is like, nope, you get life in prison. You violated probation. That's end of story. And they throw him back in there. But, while it's like I disagree with that result in that particular situation, it was a good call because he would have killed again. It would absolutely, he would have killed
for
again.
sure. And I think he told his cellmate that, this was going to be the last one. No, it wasn't.
No, I think that's what all of them say. He even drank his own blood,
Yeah.
So he was not right, and it would have continued on. But after he got life in prison, later on they find him dead in a cell, and it's just left up to speculation how he actually came to die. It was ruled a suicide.
Make sure you give the gory details on this one. Go ahead, Stacey.
Okay, I'll go ahead. So how they found him was he had something around his neck, and he had his pants down on his bunk. So what they concluded happened was he liked to asphyxiate himself while masturbating, and it just got out of hand, and he made the rope or whatever he had around his neck. I can't remember what it was exactly, but a ligature of some sort around his neck. And he made it too tight, so when he passed out, he didn't revive. So I guess that was one of the things that he enjoyed with the choking. He, liked to be asphyxiated while masturbating or whatever. So that's how they found him, was with his pants down and the ligature around his neck. So do you believe that he actually killed himself is what they ruled? Do you believe that somebody killed him and set him up like that, which I could totally believe? Or, was it an accident? Did he do it on purpose? There's a lot of different scenarios that come into play with him. I think he was too egotistical to purposely kill himself. I don't think that he would have done that. I think he thought he was better than everybody, and I think he thought way too highly of himself to actually kill himself on purpose. I mean, I don't know. I kind of go back and forth.
I don't think he was murdered. For John Crutchley to enjoy sex, it had to be keep coming more and more elaborate and intense. And I can't help but wonder if he just wanted one, final, this is going to be the end all,
The coup de grace.
experience, or did he just accidentally go too far?
Yeah, I don't know that the kind of personality that he had would have killed himself on purpose. I don't know though, like I say, I don't personally believe that somebody killed him. I think probably not, although justifiably so if they did. But I tend to believe that I think he killed himself by accident is what I think. But I can't obviously say that with any kind of certainty. He was kind of a mind-boggling creature and with everything he did. So
I have a feeling, I'm going to say 60% chance it was accidental and 40% chance it was suicidal.
yeah, I can roll with that. I believe that.
Well, we have discussed 2 books, which there are a lot of similarities between these 2 serial killers. Also, I did want to note this, that in Israel Key's case, he only hunted people that he did not know, which I believe they said is less than 1% of serial killers. They usually kill people they know.
Yeah, that's why he got away with it for so long.
In your experience, with the amount of books you read, did the killer know his victims?
The funny thing is, a lot of the times, no. A lot of the times they pick off people they don't think will be missed. It does happen where people kill people they know, but those are the ones that tend to get caught quicker. The ones that are more long-term and, throughout decades, like these 2, are the ones that are just random kills. And random to all of us. I mean, maybe not so random to them. I think they, carefully pick them in some sort of way. Something makes them pick them. But, the serial killers that get caught right away are the ones that tend to go after people that are within their inner circle or just outside, a friend of a friend or things like that.
That makes sense.
Yep.
Do you have any last final thoughts on these 2?
I'm glad I read these books. It's the only way I guess I would have known about these 2. But I guess what I have taken away from them, especially even The Devil in the Darkness, since it's so recent, it's been, within the last probably, 8 to 10 years at least, if that, that this was going on and where he actually died, is that you just don't know who's around you and what they're doing, and you'd like to see the best in people, but when you see the worst in people with these, it is kind of frightening,
It makes you want to hold your babies a little bit closer.
Yes, and trust no one.
You really don't know what the neighbor next door is doing. And I'm not trying to invoke fear in people, but, it's
Oh, no.
like people swore up and down that these 2, were not suspected of murder. They just got a little sloppy at the end and they got caught.
Right. I mean, it's extremely important to find the good in people. The vast majority of people are nothing like, these serial killers. Just anybody that does negative things or who gets the attention is what that is. There's millions and millions of good people. It's just you have to have a healthy cautiousness when it comes to people. It's always important to find the good. Everybody's got good in them. These 2 had good in them. But, it's good to have a healthy amount of caution. Just
with all this negativity, everyone who listens to this podcast should do one act of kindness to,
yeah, one act of kindness can change somebody's whole day. So
it really can. Doesn't have to be anything elaborate. Just keep that in mind next time you're out in public and, do something nice for someone just because
don't
you
get
want
in cars with people.
Yeah.
And don't get in cars with people you don't know.
Yeah. That's the moral of tonight's podcast. Do not get in cars with people you don't know.
Even
And
if it's raining.
even if it's raining. Yes. If you've enjoyed this podcast and you would like us to review other books, please drop us a line or email us. And I'm sure Nick has the email address on the website. If not, he can insert it right here. And Stacey, it's been a pleasure talking with you tonight.
Pleasure's all mine.
And I would like to note that we do not have sponsorship at the moment, but however, every once in a while we do plug products. So, Tenergy. They are great rechargeable batteries. If Tenergy is by chance listening to this and they want us to plug their product on this podcast, we will do it. Drop us a line as well. And with that, I'm Kiwi.
And I'm Stacey.
And you've been listening to the all-new Culture Cast. Have a great night, guys. Bye. Say bye.
Oh, bye.
You've been listening to the all-new Culture Cast. Check out our blog at znculturecast.wordpress.com. Send us an email at nick.culturecast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear your feedback, comments, and requests. Follow us on social media. Theme music by bensound.com. The all-new Culture Cast, a saltwater production. Original material copyright 2018. Thanks for listening.
And you've been listening to the all-new Culture Cast. Have a great night, guys. Wait, I'm redoing that one. And you would...